So Superman and Lois is back this week after a couple weeks off again. Um, and I haven't really gotten a chance to talk about season 2 a whole lot. I talked about season 1. I think I made more or less reviews for every single episode of season 1. I made a lot of videos for season 1. Season 2 has been the complete opposite, where I think like 2 videos total is the amount I've made, even though we only have 4 episodes left until the season is over. So before the show gets back this week, I wanted to just make a video talking about my thoughts on the season so far and how I'm kind of feeling about the overall season. But the breaks have been crazy this season. It feels like we're having a break after every 2 episodes. Sometimes I think we might have even had a break after only 1 episode at one point. Now, we did have a lot of breaks in season 1. Like, it's not as if season 2 is unique here. It's not. There were a lot of breaks in season 1. The thing is, though, I feel like the breaks in season 2 have been a little bit more intrusive and a little bit more obnoxious, honestly, in terms of how much they've been happening and how much they've been happening between episodes. Like, season 1 aired from very late February until mid-August-ish. Season 2 began airing in mid-January and is going to be ending in late June. So there's more or less been the same gap, or the same like space between how long the season takes to air that there is with season 2 that there was with season 1. But the difference here is that I feel like with season 1 we had much more spaces between when the breaks were happening. Their breaks were much longer in season 1. We would have more blocks of episodes and then a longer break, which I think is honestly the better way to do things. Like, I think after episode 8 we had a 2-week break, and that kind of felt weird because then we were back to another episode and then more breaks. And it's the kind of thing where I feel it probably would have been better to have kind of a defined mid-season gap. So maybe run the first 7 episodes, then rather than doing non-stop breaks after episodes, just have a much longer break and then come back after episode 8 and have kind of a proper run for the final couple episodes of the season, because we're not even done with our breaks yet. There is another break coming up. I think we're going to have the next 2 episodes and then a break and then the final 2 episodes. And at that point I think it honestly would be better to not come back this week and just wait until you can run the final 4 episodes together. It just would make the season feel much more fluid. And I understand that COVID breaks are hitting the show hard, but the thing is that Superman and Lois is kind of the only show that is having so many breaks. And at some point you kind of have to ask yourself, why is Superman and Lois the only show that constantly needs to start and stop? Because Flash is having breaks too this season. Like, this isn't unique to Superman and Lois, but Flash has not had near as many breaks. Flash, I think Flash is on break now for a week or 2 after last week's episode, and this is honestly one of the only breaks I can think of that Flash has had, other than maybe a 1 week off in April or in March. So I don't know why Superman and Lois has to non-stop have these. But yeah, I didn't really mean to start this off in a negative kind of tone, but I just feel like it's kind of just annoying as fans for the show to constantly be starting and stopping, and at some point you kind of have to wonder if it would just be better for the show to have longer breaks and then air their episodes together, sort of thing. But before kind of getting into this video properly, I just want to ask if you can subscribe if you're not already. I'm trying to hit 1k this year, which would be absolutely amazing. I make videos kind of irregularly, but I'm trying to get back into somewhat of a structure, so new subscribers really do help with that. But I want to start the video by just talking about how the episode set on Bizarro World is one of the best episodes of the show. It probably is the best episode in my opinion, besides season 1 episode 11, which that was the flashback episode. So I think the 2 best episodes of the show are kind of the ones that have really focused on this specific thing or a specific era, and that's what Bizarro World was, same as the flashback episode last season. But this episode really did fire on all cylinders, and I want to shout out Tyler Hoechlin because his version of Bizarro Clark Kent was absolutely amazing. His acting was on point the entire time, and there were parts I think where he was having an argument with Lois and he was just talking about how he's a hero, he needs to do this sort of stuff, and he was yelling it, and it was so good. And I think a reason why I really enjoyed that version of Clark Kent was because it was so different to anything we've seen before. Like, he wasn't even a morally grey Superman. He was just kind of, he felt like a real version of Superman. If Superman or Clark Kent existed today, I feel like that is what the character would realistically be, because the all-good Superman is the version we love, but I don't know if that's something that is exactly realistic. And at the same time, a villainous Superman like you see in Injustice or like Homelander in The Boys, I don't think that's realistic either. I think that this was a kind of a really interesting sort of middle of the road version of the character where he does good things, but he's also kind of like, sometimes he just isn't in the mood and just doesn't want to do it. And I really enjoyed that take on the character, because I think it would have been so easy to take this version of Clark in a complete villainous direction. But that's something we've seen last year. That's something we've pretty much see all the time with Superman these days. So I think it's really cool to kind of take this more nuanced sort of approach with the character. And I honestly just think it also did a great job of kind of differentiating him from the Superman that we see in Earth Prime and the main version of the character. So I really did enjoy that. But in general, I think that they did a great job at showcasing how different the Bizarro versions of the characters are. Anderson was a character who they utilized really well, because honestly, I was quite annoyed early on in the season with Anderson. I thought that they were taking that character in such a kind of tropey sort of way, where obviously the new government guy is actually a villain. I feel like with Mitch Anderson, while they did take him in that sort of tropey direction very quickly, I really liked how they switched that almost instantly when we got to Bizarro World, when he realized that no, Superman's actually the good guy. And I really did enjoy that, and I kind of hope that somehow we get to see that character again, because I think that killing him right as that sort of was revealed to us is kind of something that they could have not done, and they could play around with a bit more if they decide to bring the character back. Speaking about kind of that as well, Tal-Rho is another character that I've really liked what they're doing with this season. I think bringing him back in these very minor roles throughout the season has been a really good job. I honestly had no idea he was going to be in this season until he showed up in the prison episode. And so the fact that he's kind of been appearing sporadically throughout the rest of the season has been really, really good, and I've actually really enjoyed what they're doing with him. He feels very different to, say, what Arrow would do with Malcolm Merlyn or Slade Wilson, where they'd sort of bring the character back throughout. This feels much more, and again, it's kind of hard to talk about realism in a show like this, but this kind of feels more realistic, where the character isn't showing up to have a whole episode about them. The character is showing up when it's necessary, when it's important to happen. And that's something when Arrow would bring back a character like Malcolm Merlyn or Slade Wilson, they would bring them back and the entire episode would be about them. So it would feel like this kind of big event every time that character comes back. But the way that this show is bringing back Tal-Rho, it feels much more like when he comes back, the show isn't about him. This isn't kind of an episode dedicated to this character. He's coming back because he's playing an integral role in this moment of the show, and I really do like that. I think that that's a really good way to handle the character. I also think that the Bizarro version of Tal-Rho was really interesting, and I think that the Bizarro version of Tal-Rho being a good person is getting much closer to the Earth Prime version of the character than we think, and I'm really excited to see what they do in the future of that. No, I don't think they should turn Tal-Rho into a full-on ally that shows up anytime the character needs help, because that's also something Arrow kind of did a lot with their villains. But I think that kind of having him be there in sort of more of a brotherly role for Clark, but not really showing up anytime they need an extra muscle, would be a really good way to take the character. I want to compare this season to season 1 for a minute, because I feel like this season is both incredibly different but also incredibly similar. I think narratively, so from a story standpoint, I think that this season is actually very, very, very close to season 1. Maybe in ways that it shouldn't be. I think that kind of the whole thing about Ali and the Bizarro versions of the characters taking over Earth Prime versions of the characters or merging with them is very, very, very similar to what Tal-Rho was doing last season with the Kryptonians and kind of using the Eradicator to put Kryptonian minds inside of human heads. I think that those kind of two plot lines are very similar. You can definitely make arguments for why they're different. Like, there are a bunch of reasons why they are different, but I think in general, looking at it from kind of a wide point, they are a little too similar in a way that probably they shouldn't be. I'm not going to say like this season is repeating what season 1 did, but it definitely feels like it's closer than we would like, and I think that something completely different for this season might have been the better approach, and then we could do like this storyline maybe next season or in season 4. I think that having gone with Doomsday this season might have been the better choice, just because it would have differentiated this season so much from what we saw last season. Which I'm still not completely positive Doomsday is not in this season, or even just in season 3. I think that they're building up to that character, and we're probably going to see that eventually. But maybe not in this season, maybe not Death of Superman this season. Although they did sort of play on the Death of Superman thing when they had the 30 days and 30 nights where Superman was gone. I think that was supposed to kind of showcase Death of Superman sort of thing, where there was new heroes like John Henry Irons' Steel stepping up to take kind of part of the load of what Superman would have, and then Jordan also coming into his own as well. That felt very much Death of Superman because we had Steel, we had Superboy basically, so that was really cool as well. Speaking of Superboy, we had Bizarro Jonathan in the full-on Superboy outfit, and that was really, really, really cool. It's kind of a costume that I like what they did with it, because as much as I love comic accurate costumes, that is a really awkward costume to try and get working in live action because it just looks really goofy. So I like that they kind of played it off that it was a completely reverse alternate version of the character that was wearing the outfit. And I remember when the pictures of that first leaked, I was like, there's no way this is our Jonathan. There's no way they're doing that on Earth Prime. It just doesn't make sense with the Jonathan we know. It also just looks kind of goofy. And it turns out that, yeah, it was leaked set pictures from the Bizarro episode. But I did really enjoy what they did with that character, with the Bizarro version. Jordan is also a character where they're really kind of building on him being a hero now, and I'm enjoying that. I think that they're doing that really well. Now, the action scenes this season have been very few and far between. They've definitely not been happening as much. The Superman scenes, like where Superman saves person, they've still been happening every now and then, but it definitely feels like there were more Superman saving people scenes in season 1 than there are this season. But that's not really an issue for me. I think that it makes sense to kind of move away from that a little bit more and more the more we get into the show, because it's not really necessary, it's not really super important. It's always really nice to see, but yeah, I don't think it's kind of a reason why a lot of people are watching the show, so that's not really a thing. But when the action scenes have been happening, they've been absolutely great. Like the scene where they fought Bizarro and it was Tag and the Superman of America, that was an absolutely fantastic action sequence. That might be my favorite action sequence in the show. There was also the whole Mitch versus Tal-Rho and Bizarro Superman sort of thing going on. That was really good as well. And then obviously the Bizarro Earth episode where we had a whole lineup of heroes versus a whole lineup of villains sort of thing. That was, well, a whole lineup. It was Superman and Mitch Anderson versus a lineup of villains. But that was a really great fight scene as well, and I think that they've done that really well. There was a montage, I think the first time we see Bizarro Earth might be episode 6, I think, where they had the whole montage of Bizarro Superman having his own hallway fight scene kind of thing. That was absolutely great. And I think that when they've been coming to that aspect of the season, like, it's been on par with season 1. It's been really, really good. Overall, though, I'm going to get a little bit negative here. I think that this season has been quite a step down from season 1. I think season 1 overall was more well structured. I think the pacing of season 1 was better. I think that just individual episodes were much better in season 1 as well. I'm not hating season 2, obviously. I'm still quite enjoying it. It's still one of my favorite shows this year. But I think that there is a pretty strong possibility that when all is said and done, this season is going to be quite a bit lower than season 1 in my, like, for me personally. I just think, and now the breaks definitely could be playing a role in that. I think that the non-stop breaks have been affecting my view of the season. But even then, season 1 had breaks and I was still obsessed with the show every time it came back. Like, I couldn't help myself. I had to watch it straight away. With season 2, I have felt a little bit less hyped every time the breaks happen, and I'm like, okay, alright, I'll watch the show, yeah, of course, but it's not like I'm foaming at the mouth here waiting for a new episode. Whereas with season 1, I can remember every single episode of season 1. Like, I remember when I watched it, where I was when I watched it, because of how much I was loving it. Season 2, on the other hand, a lot of the episodes in my head are kind of meshing together, other than like the Bizarro episode, other than the episode where they had the fight with Superman of America, kind of that sort of thing. So I think also the season just hasn't had as much big moments. When it comes to villains as well, I don't think this season has been as strong. Ali is quite a weird villain. Now obviously we still have a couple more episodes, so she could be much better. The whole season could improve so much more in the final episodes, and I'm excited to see what they do. But Ali in general was not near as interesting as like Tal-Rho, or before we knew John Henry Irons was a hero sort of thing. She's not near as interesting as that. I honestly would have preferred it, I think, if Ali was Lois's villain for this season. Like, Ali wasn't this kind of whole superpowered thing trying to get to Bizarro Earth. I think that I would have much preferred her character if she was just a cult leader and Lois had to use her reporting skills and everything she knows to try and take down this cult that is affecting her sister, sort of thing. I think that tying all that into this big superhero, superpowered plotline is not personally what I was hoping the season would do, or where I was hoping the season would go. And normally when the show does something I'm hoping it doesn't do, it ends up working out really well. This is one of the few times I think it did not work well. Also, it just feels like a lot of characters are taking a huge back seat this season. The Kents in general don't feel like they have been nearly as important. Jordan and Jonathan have still gotten a lot to do, but Clark and Lois in particular, I feel, are not nearly as important or integral to this season as they were last season. John Henry Irons is another character. He was missing for a good few episodes, which made sense because he was really badly injured. But it's kind of a little bit frustrating when so many characters that I'm a huge fan of personally, like Clark, Lois, John Henry Irons, take such a backseat compared to everybody else. On the flip side of that, it does feel like the Cushing family stepped up a fair bit. Like, they feel much more important to this season than before. Kyle hasn't been in this season in the last couple episodes as much. He was in a lot of the early episodes, but Lana and Sarah specifically have been quite important this season. The cliffhanger in the most recent episode where Clark finally reveals that he's Superman to Lana was fantastic. One of the best episodes of the show, hands down, and I'm really excited to see how they kind of wrap that up, how they kind of come off of that cliffhanger and what they do, because I think that's a really good way to go with their character. I think if they're going to keep the Cushings around every season, I think this is the way to do it, to kind of slowly develop what they know. And I'm excited to see now how Lana is folded into the dynamic of Clark, the Kents, Lois, all that sort of things. In general, I think that there have been a few missteps with the Cushings, specifically Kyle. I think that taking Kyle in the direction they did was kind of dumb. I know that I mentioned this in my early reviews of the season, but I think that what they did with Kyle this season felt like what they were aiming to do with Kyle last season, but then they didn't do it with Kyle last season, so now they're doing it with this season, and that's where we're supposed to think he's kind of a shitty person. And while season 1 went surprise surprise, he isn't. It feels like this season they're going surprise surprise, he is. And I don't know, I think that in general I don't like what they did with his character this season. I think that they took a character that there was no reason for us to believe he was like, yeah, he drank a lot, but I can't remember him doing anything particularly really bad last season, whereas this season, like, they're just straight up saying he's kind of a shitty person. So I'm a little bit annoyed they did that with the character. I didn't feel like there was a point to do that. At the same time, Lucy returning, she's obviously not the character from Supergirl anymore. That was a whole Earth, a whole different universe. But I think that what they did with her in this show wasn't as interesting. I think they started off on a really interesting path with her character, and they kind of took it off of there. And I don't know, I'm not really kind of happy with how they ended up utilizing her character in the show. Jonathan's whole Kryptonite XK sort of thing was a little weird as well, I'm not gonna lie. I think that worked out okay because we got some good stuff with Jordan out of it, but I think they could have handled the early parts of that differently as well. In general, I think the character decisions this season have not been as solid as season 1. I can't remember there was any character in season 1 I was like, I don't like what they're doing with this character. Even in the early parts where I know a lot of people are complaining about Jordan in the early episodes of season 1, even then I thought that paid off super well. So it's possible some of this stuff will pay off, but currently there are quite a few character decisions I'm not too happy about with this season, and that's kind of unfortunate. But like, I know I got a little bit negative towards the season at the end there, but I still am really enjoying the show. It still is one of my favorite shows on TV at the moment, and I still absolutely love the characters. Well, most of the characters, like Superman, Lois stuff, absolute perfect characters. But that's kind of just my thoughts on Superman Lois Season 2 so far. I'm hoping to get back to doing weekly reviews now that the show is back, and I'm excited to see what they do in these final 4 episodes. I'll probably make a video talking about what I hope to see in the final few episodes of the show like I did with Season 1. But how are you feeling about Superman Lois Season 2? Do you think it's better than Season 1 so far? Do you think it's worse than Season 1 so far? Are you enjoying the episodes? Are you enjoying the characters? And if you enjoyed this video, please remember to like, share, subscribe, and all of that. And I hope you have a fantastic day.